We have Stephanie, who directed the zombie movie, and this is the world premiere. We have Karen Lam, who directed the feature film Evangeline that we just saw, and Jennifer, who directed the short animation. So I would like to invite the audience to ask questions. But first of all, I would like to know, as female directors, being a horror genre director, is that something you chose as a career path, or it's just for this movie?
It's not so much about having chosen it. I guess it's kind of, it just sounds cheesy, but the ideas choose me. I just kind of go with the ideas that I feel most passionate about, that I can actually get behind it and get to the end.
I only write when I'm really pissed off, so it tends to be that, yeah, everything that comes out tends to be horror, so I haven't written anything else.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing with me as well. I mean, I've always been a horror fan, so it makes sense then that the stuff that I produce would be of a similar vein.
I have noticed the way women treat the subject matter of sexuality and violence. It's in a very unique way, very unique vision. So would you like to talk about how you approach those very difficult subjects?
As you know, one of the key scenes in Evangeline was actually the rape scene, and I think that you're always in this really catch-22 situation as a female filmmaker, because if you sexualize the violence, you're doing the same thing that's been done again and again. And if you don't show the violence, then people say you're too much of a wuss to actually do it, or you can't direct it. So I think for me, what I try to do is for the violence to keep it as short and brutal as I possibly can, because that's what I actually see as compared to something quite stylish and beautiful. And as far as the rape scene went, it was trying to show it from her perspective and just really, really get in her mind rather than in his. So.
Yeah, I think, working in this genre, I think we do because we're trying to get at some difficult subject matter and tackle it. And, the sex and the violence, these are the two mainstays. So, what Karen was saying, you're sensitive to it, and I think through a female lens, as in the case with, say, a rape revenge film, I sense that, Karen, it's very different from the previous films, like I Spit on Your Grave. It's less exploitive, less dwelling on, the rape aspects, and more getting to the revenge, And I think, for myself, I think that the depictions of sexuality can be darkly tinged without necessarily being exploitive.
Well, my film didn't really deal with any sexual violence. It was more betrayal, and it just seemed sort of. It was an extreme betrayal. It was kind of a murderous betrayal, and sort of naturally followed that it should be punished by violence. I feel that. The whole thing of sexual violence, or just sexual violation, it's kind of more personal and more kind of destructive, probably to your mind, to be attacked in that way. And for, I guess, responding to violence seems like sort of a fitting. It's something that would definitely incite wanting to punish with violence.
And your film was a student film, I believe, right?
Yes.
Very well done. So, do we have any questions from the audience? Well, I have a question, a personal question. You have very strong leading female characters in your films. Do you think it's a challenge for a women director to have male characters, or is it natural for you to just write female lead actors and characters?
I didn't set out to specifically, I didn't really think the matter over. It just sort of naturally followed that my protagonist was a woman. I don't think it would be terribly difficult to write a male character, but for this one, just sort of spontaneously was a woman.
I think I feel like I have a responsibility for it. It's funny because I'm writing a comedy right now, and it started off as a male lawyer, and I thought, well, why shouldn't it be a female character? So I just flipped it around. I think it's actually there are enough people writing male characters. I think it's time to actually write a few more roles for women. I think so.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, there are male directors that write great roles for women as well, like Mort and others not so much. And I think it's the same thing for women directors, but, you know, being a woman, yes, you know, my protagonists do tend to be female just because that's, you know, how I view the world, so it makes sense.
So I'm wondering, how do you treat, there's blood in every film, even in animation.
Yeah.
Is that something that is anchored into the horror genre? Can we make horror without showing any blood? Is that possible, in your opinion?
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely possible. I think the dread is the kind of most powerful agent of horror. And blood is just sort of pretty. It's, it's sort of like a release of tension. That's how I feel about it.
My first short film, The Cabinet, didn't have any blood, and but then I kind of missed the amount of blood, so I think we used a whole container of it for Evangeline. So.
And I think in mine as well. I mean, in my case, it's actually paper, but it does look great on, you know, under the camera. And you know, I was thinking more because it's very theatrical, obviously, in this kind of grand guignol style of, you know, puppetry and you know, this kind of almost hyperbolic violence. But yeah, I mean, certainly horror can be fantastic and just more atmospheric. But yeah, the blood, I mean, it definitely adds a lovely splash of color.
Any questions from the audience? Yes, Charles?
For Jennifer, I'd like to know how time-consuming it is to do the paper animation.
So the question is, how consuming it is to do a paper animation?
Well, all animation actually is pretty, yeah. And so the style I work with is paper cutouts and articulated paper puppets, which is probably one of the first known forms of animation. I work that way just because my subject matter tends to be fairly fantastic and surreal. And the paper puppets, because they have a very limited mobility and they move in a kind of very stiff and clunky way, it's doing a lot of the heavy lifting for me. They already look kind of creepy, you know, and that kind of, you know, how we all know Terry Gilliam, right? He's probably the best known practitioner of the paper cutout. And his films had often, I mean, they're funny, obviously, but they also had a kind of creepy undertone to them, and he was certainly an inspiration for me working in that style. So, you know, and it's great when your medium is already taking you halfway there, you know. But yes, a lot of the work you see there, it's all under camera, right? I'm not using digital effects except for a couple of cans. And yeah, it's just little tiny movements, 24 frames a second. But, you know, it's, you know, it's enjoyable when it's all put together.
This question is for Karen. Can you explain to the audience the meaning behind that chamber where Evangeline had her moments of revelation or maybe fear?
I was really inspired by, there's an idea in Asian afterlife, it's actually in Japanese and in Chinese culture, which is that death is actually in this mansion with 1,000 rooms, and they're all windowless and doorless, and you kind of wait in some sort of purgatory state. And in this case, I wanted to play with the idea that she's both in death, but then you can also look at it that maybe it's actually just a fractured part of her mind, that she's actually alive and this is actually all happening. So it really was a one way of depicting the afterlife for me.
I'm going to ask you a question. Did the way that the character sort of came back to life, or didn't, but there was the aspect of her sort of being beyond the grave and having supernatural powers. I was just wondering, and you know, it happened in the forest and everything, I was wondering if it drew on any established, existing mythology.
I'm a magpie. I think I steal a little from everything. It actually sort of evolved. I mean, Chinese ghosts eat, so that's really important. That she's kind of like a revenant, but she's not exactly, and she might be a zombie, but she's not exactly, and she's not possessed exactly. But I do see it like a way. I'm playing with this mythology that sort of like it's an old god that's come back from the forest, and it keeps getting blood sacrifice because people keep dumping. I don't know if you guys follow news in Vancouver, but people just die in BC, and their bodies are either never found or they're just kind of thrown in different places. So I had this idea that this old god, or goddess, just keeps getting blood sacrifice, and after a certain amount, she's looking for a host body, and that's sort of where it sort of stemmed from.
And to finish, unless we have another question from the audience. Oh, 2 questions, so we'll take the 2. Sir?
Does Evangeline have distribution at this point?
The question is, does Evangeline has distribution at this point?
I have a sales agent. We sold to Korea, so it's also playing at the Korean Pipan Festival coming up in July. And we just got Latin distribution, so we're supposed to be doing a theatrical release in Mexico, and I'm talking to Telefilm about doing a Canadian theatrical distribution, so we're just waiting for some of the sales.
And the other question there?
I have 2. One is a question mark. I didn't. The woman with the chains in her back, is that supposed to be part of the same room structure?
Yeah, the women with the chains in her back, is that supposed to be part of the same room?
I see it almost like it is that mansion of 1,000 rooms, so everyone's sort of in their own, and not sure that there are any other rooms actually. So
So that's like a distinct figure from. Okay. My second question has to do with a transition that I noticed. The artifacting transition.
That is not intentional.
Is it?
That actually is something to do with, I have no idea. They're just white flashes, and every time it went white, it also had the artifacting, so I'm not sure what that was.
It actually, I thought it was totally intentional.
I totally meant to do that. That was exactly what I meant.
So to finish this beautiful Q&A, can you please just let the audience know where you're going next? What's your next project? What's coming up in the future?
It's going to be more surreal, a little darker, maybe a little bit of comedy. I'm looking for producers and writers to work with, because I just wrote this one because I didn't have anyone to work with, but I prefer to have a team. So
any writers in the room, manifest yourself.
I'm out of South Korea with my 3rd feature script, which is Inspiria, and it's a supernatural thriller, and it's done sort of in an Italian giallo style.
I'm currently working on my next animated short called Toronto Alice. So basically, Alice in Wonderland in contemporary Toronto, taking a ride, an eventful ride on the streetcar.
Wow, very good. So thank you very much, everyone, for staying this late. It's very appreciated. Thank you to the directors. Beautiful works. Continue like this, Power Women in Horror. And my name is Petite, director, and I thank you on behalf of the Female Icon Festival for this presentation. Thank you.